Behind those steel bars lurks a monster even hardened criminals fear. Once the president of Hell's Angels' most violent chapter, he ran an empire of blood from his cell. Guards whisper his name, inmates clear hallways when he walks through. His hands have ended lives, his orders still control the outside world. And his reputation? Legendary. What he did to his enemies will make your skin crawl. Raymond Rainman Folks, who earned his nickname likely due to particular skills or traits within his organization. Raymond Rainman Folks struck terror into the hearts of even the most hardened criminals. As president of the Sonoma County Charter of the Hells Angels, Folks wasn't just any biker. He was a calculated enforcer whose reputation for extreme violence made him one of the most feared men in the prison system. With his hulking frame covered in tattoos and cold, dead eyes that seemed to look right through you, Rainman earned his nickname not for any intellectual abilities, but for the storm of violence he would rain down on those who crossed him or the club. Folks' rise through the Hells Angels ranks wasn't by chance. It was built on a foundation of brutal enforcement and unwavering loyalty to the club's code. When members stepped out of line, it was often Rainman who delivered punishment. His preferred method was making examples of people, ensuring the brutality was witnessed by others who might consider similar transgressions. In prison, this reputation followed him, with inmates giving him a wide berth in the yard and guards approaching with caution. The incident that cemented his fearsome status occurred when he discovered a fellow Hells Angel was having an affair with his common-law wife. Instead of just targeting the man, Folks orchestrated an elaborate trap. He lured the member to a warehouse where several other angels were waiting. What followed was a beating so savage that witnesses later testified they thought the man wouldn't survive. Folks didn't just participate, he directed the violence like a conductor, ensuring maximum suffering without death. But Folks didn't stop there. His wrath extended to the woman involved. She was beaten severely and threatened with death if she spoke to authorities. This dual punishment sent a chilling message through the ranks. Betrayal of any kind would be met with unforgiving consequences. In prison, stories of this incident spread, adding to the aura of danger that surrounded him. The Department of Justice had been building a case against the Hells Angels for years, and Folks became a primary target in their RICO investigation. Phone taps captured him, coordinating club activities from assaults to drug trafficking. The evidence painted a picture of a man who wasn't just violent, but strategically so, using brutality as a business tool to maintain control over territory and members. His involvement stretched beyond personal vendettas into a sophisticated criminal enterprise. When finally brought to trial, Folks maintained the Hells Angels code of silence, refusing to cooperate or implicate others. The jury convicted him on multiple charges: RICO conspiracy, assault with a deadly weapon in aid of racketeering, and witness intimidation. The 60-year sentence he received reflected not just the crimes proven in court, but the danger he represented to society. Behind bars, Folks quickly established himself in the prison hierarchy. Other inmates, even those from rival gangs, recognized his status. He didn't need to fight for respect. His reputation preceded him. Prison guards noted how he could control situations with just a look or a nod, maintaining influence without obvious displays of power. Even from his cell, he managed to send messages to the outside, ensuring club business continued. What makes Rainman particularly feared is his unpredictability. Unlike some criminals who follow a certain code or pattern, Folks could switch from calm conversation to explosive violence in seconds. This made him especially dangerous in the controlled prison environment, where inmates and staff alike learned to watch for subtle shifts in his demeanor. As feared as Raymond Folks was for his direct violence, Merle Hefferman earned his reputation through a much more chilling specialty: making bodies disappear without a trace. Merle Hefferman. Merle Hefferman, who gained notoriety for his alleged role in disposing of evidence, earning him the macabre title of the body disposal expert. Merle Hefferman wasn't the type of Hell's Angel who made headlines for street fights or shootouts. His specialty was much more sinister. He was the man who made problems vanish permanently. Known within the club as the Cleaner, Hefferman developed a reputation as the go-to guy, when evidence needed to disappear, particularly human evidence. His day job gave him the perfect cover for his gruesome specialty. He organized children's charity events, presenting himself as a community-minded biker who just happened to wear Hell's Angels colors. This public face of generosity masked one of the most chilling operations in outlaw biker history. At the center of Hefferman's notorious reputation was what inmates and club members called the Pizza Oven, actually a crematory at a Fresno funeral home that became the final destination for those who crossed the Hell's Angels. Hefferman's connection to Levi Phipps, the manager of this funeral home, gave him after-hours access to the facility's cremation equipment. This relationship proved invaluable to the club when they needed to dispose of bodies without leaving evidence behind. The most documented use of Hefferman's disposal services came in July 2014, when Joel Silver, a Sonoma County Hell's Angel, was murdered at the Fresno clubhouse after disrespecting another member at a motorcycle event. Within hours of Silver's death, Hefferman arranged for the body to be cremated, erasing all physical evidence of the crime. According to court testimony, he contacted Phipps and instructed him to leave the crematory unlocked after hours. Later that night, armed men arrived with Silver's body, used the facility, and disappeared without a trace. Hefferman's warning to Phipps was clear: speak about this to anyone, and you'd be next in line for the oven. But Joel Silver wasn't Hefferman's only client. Federal prosecutors alleged that he facilitated the disposal of at least 3 other bodies using the same method. Among them were Robbie Huff, another Hell's Angel, who disappeared in 2015 after falling out of favor with club leadership, and Art Karasis, who vanished in 2016 following a dispute over drug territory. Phone records placed Hefferman near the funeral home on the dates these men disappeared, and confidential informants provided details that only someone involved would know. Even more disturbing, government investigators suggested there might be additional victims yet to be identified. Unfortunate souls who crossed the club and ended up as ashes scattered to the wind. The full extent of Hefferman's body count may never be known, as perfect disposal leaves no evidence to find. Unlike some Hell's Angels who boasted about their violent exploits, Hefferman maintained a calculating silence about his activities. This discretion made him particularly valuable to the club's leadership. He understood that his power came not from being feared personally, but from providing an essential service that kept other angels out of prison. His methodical approach to eliminating evidence demonstrated a cold pragmatism that many found more terrifying than outright violence. When authorities finally closed in on Hefferman, they charged him with obstruction of justice rather than murder, a reflection of his role as the cleaner rather than the killer. In October 2022, he was sentenced to 4 years in prison, a sentence that many felt didn't reflect the true horror of his crimes. However, his conviction represented a significant blow to the Hell's Angels' ability to literally get away with murder. Behind bars, Hefferman maintains the same quiet demeanor that served him well on the outside. Other inmates give him a wide berth, not because of any displays of violence, but because they understand what he represents, the man who can make people vanish without a trace. Guards report that he's a model prisoner, but they're under no illusions about his past. One correctional officer reportedly commented, "When Hefferman looks at you, it's like he's calculating how many pounds of ash you'd produce." While Hefferman specialized in making problems disappear, Thomas Heath had a different approach to dealing with the Hell's Angels' enemies: explosive violence that sent a clear message to anyone considering crossing the club. Thomas Heath, known as the Bomber, suggesting his involvement with explosives or bombing incidents. Thomas Heath earned his fearsome reputation not through stealth or cunning, but through explosive violence, quite literally. A long-standing member of the Ventura chapter of the Hell's Angels, Heath became notorious as the club's bomber, a man who resolved conflicts with devastating firepower that left both his targets and the surrounding community in terror. His willingness to use indiscriminate violence made him uniquely feared even among the criminal underworld, where his name became synonymous with unpredictable destruction. Heath's criminal career reached public attention in the 1970s, when he orchestrated a bombing targeting the rival Mongols motorcycle gang, another notorious outlaw club that had been encroaching on Hells Angels territory in Southern California. The 1977 explosion at a Los Angeles auto shop wasn't just an attack on rival gang members. It claimed the lives of a 15-year-old boy and a 22-year-old man. Collateral damage in Heath's campaign of terror. This willingness to harm innocents to make a point established Heath as someone who operated beyond the typical criminal code. The bombing investigation eventually led to Heath's conviction for second-degree murder in 1994, resulting in a 7-year prison sentence. But this time behind bars did nothing to rehabilitate him or diminish his violent tendencies. If anything, his prison stint only enhanced his reputation within the club as someone willing to make extreme sacrifices for the Hells Angels. Fellow inmates from that period describe Heath as unnervingly calm, a man who spoke casually about violence as though discussing the weather. By 1992, Heath faced additional charges for assaulting his wife with a deadly weapon, showcasing that his violent nature extended beyond club business into his personal relationships. During this trial, prosecutors revealed Heath's methods of intimidation, including threats to silence witnesses, a tactic that had helped him avoid consequences for previous crimes. This second conviction earned him another 7-year prison term, building his reputation as a career criminal who cycled between freedom and incarceration. After his release, Heath returned to Ventura, California, where his mere presence was enough to instill fear in the community. In 2010, when a woman with whom he was living asked him to leave her home, Heath's response demonstrated why he remained one of the most feared Hells Angels, even in his 60s. He refused to move out and threatened to kill both the woman and her son, adding the chilling warning that if he couldn't do it himself, the Hells Angels would finish the job. When police arrived to investigate, Heath doubled down on his threats, leading to his arrest. During his subsequent trial, prosecutors painted a picture of a man whose criminal identity was inseparable from his Hells Angels affiliation, describing him as a dangerous enforcer who used the club's reputation to enhance his own intimidation tactics. While Heath's defense team argued that the trial unfairly targeted the motorcycle club rather than focusing on individual actions, the evidence of his violent history was overwhelming. The court took into account Heath's extensive criminal record, including the murder conviction from 1977 and the assault charge from 1992. The prosecutor described his file as a horrible criminal history, noting that each time Heath had been released from prison, he had quickly returned to violence. Based on this pattern of recidivism and the serious nature of his threats, the judge sentenced Heath to 35 years to life, essentially ensuring he would spend the rest of his life behind bars. In prison, Heath maintains the aura of danger that defined his life outside. Other inmates, even those affiliated with rival gangs, give him space, aware of both his personal history of violence and his continued connections to the Hells Angels. Prison guards report that Heath rarely needs to engage in conflicts himself. His reputation does the fighting for him. One correctional officer noted, "When Heath enters a room, you can feel the atmosphere change. Other inmates just clear a path." While Thomas Heath's explosive violence made him feared on the streets, Brian Wayne Wentz represented a different kind of danger, the cold, calculated enforcer who eliminated problems within the club's own ranks. Brian Wayne Wentz. Brian Wayne Wentz, a significant figure in the outlaw biker world. Brian Wayne Wentz epitomized the cold, calculated enforcer within the Hells Angels hierarchy. As president of the Salem Charter, Wentz wasn't flashy or boisterous like some outlaw bikers. His power came from his reputation for handling club problems with efficient brutality. Standing 6 feet tall with muscular arms covered in Hells Angels ink, Wentz had a stare that could freeze blood. But what made him truly terrifying wasn't his physical presence. It was his complete detachment when carrying out the club's most brutal punishments. Wentz's climb through the ranks wasn't based on charisma or political maneuvering, but on his unwavering willingness to do what others couldn't or wouldn't. When the club needed someone eliminated, Wentz stepped up without hesitation or remorse. This cold efficiency earned him the respect of the Hells Angels leadership and the fear of everyone else. In prison, this reputation preceded him, with both inmates and guards treating him with cautious deference. The incident that cemented Wentz's fearsome status occurred in July 2014, when Joel Silver, a member of the Sonoma County Charter, made a fatal error at a motorcycle event in Ionia, New Hampshire. Silver got into a heated argument with another member, perceived as a direct challenge to the club's strict code of respect. For Jonathan Nelson, president of the Fresno Charter, and Russell Taylor, president of the Sonoma Charter, this display of disrespect demanded the ultimate punishment. What followed demonstrated why Wentz was considered one of the club's most valuable enforcers. The body was quickly transported to a local crematory that club member Merle Hefferman had arranged to be left open after hours. By morning, Silver's remains were reduced to ashes, and his truck was torched to eliminate any evidence. The cleanup was as efficient as the killing, methodical, thorough, and without panic. For years, the truth about Silver's disappearance remained hidden, protected by the Hells Angels Code of Silence. But as federal investigators built their RICO case against the club, the walls began closing in on Wentz. Phone records, surveillance footage, and eventually testimony from witnesses painted a clear picture of his role in Silver's death. During the 2022 trial, prosecutors revealed the motive behind Silver's murder. He had allegedly been involved in an affair with another member's wife, a betrayal the Hells Angels wouldn't tolerate. This seemingly personal matter had become club business, requiring Wentz's particular skills to resolve. The jury found Wentz, along with Nelson and Taylor, guilty of murder in aid of racketeering, a conviction that carried a life sentence. Behind bars, Wentz maintains the same stone-cold demeanor that made him effective on the outside. He rarely speaks about his case, following the Hells Angels code even in prison. Other inmates describe him as quietly terrifying, someone who doesn't need to make threats because his reputation does the intimidating for him. Prison staff note that he follows rules perfectly, not out of respect for authority, but from the same disciplined approach that made him such an effective enforcer. What makes Wentz particularly chilling is his complete lack of emotion when discussing his crimes. During one prison interview, when asked about the Silver murder, he reportedly showed no remorse or regret, viewing it simply as club business that needed handling. This emotional detachment, combined with his methodical approach to violence, marks him as a true sociopath, someone capable of taking a life with the same emotional investment as ordering lunch. While Barger may have been the visionary and Heath the explosive enforcer, Wentz represents something perhaps more terrifying: the cold, efficient face of the Hells Angels' internal justice system. He serves as a stark reminder that in the world of outlaw motorcycle clubs, the most dangerous threats often come from within. Robert Chico Mora.
Theater, Cleveland, Ohio. The only time the Dead in 5 Heartbeats is going to be in the state of Ohio. Join us today, Chico, one of the stars of the show. Brother, appreciate you joining us.
How you doing? I play Ahab, the president of the Oakland Infidels. When Pat's left to go to Arizona, I took over in Oakland.
Robert Chico Mora, a prominent member of the outlaw biker community. Video 0.25 to 0.40. Before the Hells Angels dominated Arizona's highways and criminal underworld, there was Robert Chico Mora and his Dirty Dozen motorcycle club. Recognizable by their sinister black and white patch featuring cobweb-covered dice, the Dirty Dozen struck fear into the hearts of civilians, rival gangs, and law enforcement alike. At the center of this reign of terror stood Mora, a man whose name alone could clear a room and whose reputation for unflinching brutality earned him both respect and fear throughout the Southwest. What truly cemented Mora's legendary status was the annual Florence Prison Run, a tradition he established in 1975. Each year, thousands of bikers would converge on the small town of Florence, home to multiple state prisons, in a show of solidarity with incarcerated club members. The event was as much a show of force as it was a celebration, a reminder to authorities that the club's power extended beyond prison walls. During these runs, Mora would lead the procession, his black and chrome Harley at the front of a mile-long parade of thundering motorcycles. When Chico rolled into town, you could feel it in your bones, recalled a former Florence police officer. It wasn't just the noise of all those bikes, it was knowing what these men were capable of, and that for the next 48 hours, they owned your town. Mora's violent tendencies weren't just directed at rivals or law enforcement. He maintained iron discipline within his own ranks through brutal enforcement. Club members who violated rules or questioned his authority faced consequences, ranging from severe beatings to forced Russian roulette. Former members, if they managed to leave alive, spoke of witnessing Mora beat a man unconscious with a pool cue for spilling a drink on his boots and forcing another to burn his own colors after attempting to leave the club. By the mid-1980s, Mora's criminal empire faced new challenges. The Hells Angels had set their sights on Arizona, seeing it as crucial territory in their nationwide expansion. Rather than engage in a potentially devastating war, Mora made a calculated decision that shocked the outlaw biker world. He negotiated a patch-over, bringing the Dirty Dozen under the Hells Angels banner. The 1996 ceremony where Dirty Dozen members exchanged their cobweb dice patches for the infamous Hells Angels Death's Head represented one of the most significant power shifts in outlaw biker history. Those unwilling to join were forced to retire or leave the state. With this move, Mora transitioned from independent outlaw to a high-ranking officer in the world's most notorious motorcycle club, bringing his reputation for extreme violence with him. Mora's criminal record continued to grow after the patch-over. In 1998, he was convicted of manslaughter during a deadly shooting at a Scottsdale bar. Witnesses described how an argument over a pool game escalated when Mora pulled a .45 from his waistband and fired 3 shots, killing a 26-year-old patron who had no connection to any biker gang. During his trial, prosecutors introduced evidence linking him to at least 4 other unsolved murders, though he was never charged in those cases. While serving his 15-year sentence for the Scottsdale shooting, Mora's influence over the Arizona Hells Angels hardly diminished. Guards reported that other inmates, even those from rival gangs, treated him with deference bordering on fear. Prison officials frequently found contraband in his cell, from homemade weapons to cell phones, suggesting his ability to manipulate the system remained intact. 3 guards were eventually fired for providing him special treatment. After his release in 2013, an aging Mora maintained his connections to the club, though health issues from decades of hard living had begun to catch up with him. Chronic liver disease from years of heavy drinking and hepatitis C, contracted during an early prison stint, had left him physically diminished, but no less dangerous. Law enforcement sources reported that even in his 60s, younger members wouldn't dare challenge his authority or question his decisions. Mora's legend grew even after his final incarceration in 2017 on weapons charges. Stories of his exploits, many exaggerated but some horrifyingly true, continue to circulate in prison yards and clubhouses across the Southwest. Current inmates report that even mentioning his name carries weight, particularly among Arizona's prison population. Chico wasn't just respected, he was feared, explained a former cellmate. I've seen guys who'd fight anyone back down when they heard Mora was connected to a situation. That kind of reputation doesn't just go away because you're behind bars. If anything, it gets stronger. While Robert Chico Mora built his reputation through brazen violence and public displays of power, our next Hells Angel represents something perhaps even more dangerous. A man who knew all the club's darkest secrets and eventually decided to tell them to the world. George Wethen. George Wethen, who likely held a position of influence within outlaw motorcycle organizations. George Wethen's journey from Hells Angels vice president to federal informant reads like a Hollywood thriller, complete with murder, betrayal, and a desperate bid for survival that would forever change his life and the outlaw biker world. Unlike many of his brothers who came from broken homes and juvenile detention, Wethen started out as an all-American boy in Oakland, California. His fall from grace and eventual rise to the upper echelons of the country's most notorious motorcycle club makes his story all the more compelling, and his betrayal all the more dangerous. Born in 1943, Wethen's early life gave no indication of the path he would eventually take. Raised in a middle-class family with no significant criminal history, he was an average student who enjoyed working on motorcycles. Things began to shift when he dropped out of high school at 16, seeking adventure by enlisting in the Air Force using falsified documents. This early deception foreshadowed a life defined by living outside society's rules. After receiving a less than honorable discharge from the military, Whethan returned to Oakland during the cultural upheaval of the early 1960s. The counterculture movement was taking hold, and the Hells Angels were transitioning from a group of hard-drinking motorcycle enthusiasts to an organized criminal enterprise. For a young man seeking identity and brotherhood, the Angels' outlaw lifestyle held an irresistible appeal. The first time I saw those guys roaring down the highway, colors flying, I knew that's what I wanted, Whethan later wrote in his memoir. They weren't asking anybody's permission to live free. They were taking that freedom for themselves. Whethan patched in with the Oakland chapter in 1963, quickly impressing other members with his mechanical skills, fearlessness, and absolute loyalty to the club. Most importantly, he formed a close friendship with Ralph "Sonny" Barger, the chapter's president and already a rising star in the organization. This connection accelerated Whethan's rise through the ranks, and by 1967, he was serving as vice president of the Oakland Hells Angels, the mother chapter and most powerful franchise in the club's growing empire. As second in command, Whethan wasn't just participating in the club's criminal activities, he was helping direct them. Under his and Barger's leadership, the Oakland Angels expanded beyond traditional biker pursuits into sophisticated drug trafficking operations, focusing primarily on methamphetamine and LSD. Whethan personally oversaw distribution networks that stretched from California to Texas, managing both production and transportation of product worth millions. The money flowed freely. Using proceeds from drug sales, Whethan purchased a sprawling 156-acre ranch in Mendocino County's Potter Valley. While officially a cattle ranch, the property served multiple purposes for the club: a secluded meeting place, a safe house for members on the run, and, as authorities would later discover, a convenient location to dispose of bodies. By 1970, Whethan's criminal activities had caught up with him. Facing multiple charges including assault, drug trafficking, and suspicion of murder, he made the stunning decision to leave the Hells Angels, a move that violated the club's most sacred rule: once an angel, always an angel. Attempting to start fresh, he moved his family to his ranch and tried to distance himself from his former brothers. The Hells Angels, however, weren't willing to let one of their leaders simply walk away, especially one who knew their operations intimately. According to court documents, Barger and other high-ranking members began pressuring Whethan to continue laundering money through his property and storing weapons and drugs. When he resisted, threats escalated to violence. The breaking point came in 1972 when authorities discovered 3 bodies buried on Whethan's ranch. One was a woman who had been involved with the club, and the other 2 were Hells Angels who had allegedly plotted against leadership. The gruesome discovery was linked to a dispute with William Zorro Mitten, a fellow angel to whom Whethan owed a significant debt. According to testimony Whethan would later provide, during a drug-fueled party at the ranch, he shot Mitten during an argument. This act set off a chain of violent events that ultimately led to multiple murders. The victims were reportedly drugged with LSD-laced coffee before being killed, their bodies dumped into abandoned wells on the property. The case broke wide open thanks to William "Whispering Bill" Piper, another former angel who had turned informant. Facing terminal cancer and desperate to die outside a cell, Piper struck a deal with federal prosecutors. He revealed details about the murders and led authorities to Whethan's ranch, where a raid uncovered an arsenal of weapons and significant quantities of drugs. After completing his testimony, Whethan, his wife, and their children entered the Federal Witness Protection Program, disappearing with new identities. But he wasn't content to simply vanish. In 1978, he published A Wayward Angel, a tell-all memoir detailing his time with the Hells Angels and his decision to testify against them. The book pulled back the curtain on the club's inner workings, destroying the romantic outlaw image they had carefully cultivated. For the Hells Angels, Whethan's betrayal represented an existential threat. Not only had he exposed their criminal activities, but he had also violated the code of silence that formed the backbone of outlaw biker culture. A death warrant was effectively issued, with members across the country instructed to kill Whethan on sight, a contract that remains open to this day. In that world, there's no statute of limitations on betrayal, explained a former undercover agent who infiltrated biker gangs. Even now, decades later, if they found him, they'd kill him without hesitation. Whethan's current whereabouts remain unknown. Some reports suggest he died of natural causes in the early 2000s, while others claim he's still alive, living under a new identity in a rural area far from California. Whatever the truth, his legacy as the man who knew too much and told it all continues to haunt the Hells Angels. While George Whethan's betrayal damaged the Hells Angels through the legal system, our next feared biker, Adam Lee Hall, showed just how far the club would go to prevent witnesses from ever reaching the courtroom in the first place. Adam Lee Hall. Adam Lee Hall, known for serious criminal activities within the biker world.
Good evening and welcome to 22 News at 6. I'm Barry Krieger.
And I'm Laura Hutchinson. Hells Angels biker gang member Adam Lee Hall has been found guilty of killing 3 men from Pittsfield.
22 News I-Team reporter Ryan Walsh was in court today as those verdicts were read.
The jury first-degree murder in addition to several other charges.
You upon your oath do say that the defendant is guilty of murder in the first degree.
As the guilty verdicts were read, Adam Lee Hall's moment of freedom was over. His handcuffs were slapped back on. A jury found Hall, a member of the Hells Angels biker gang, guilty of killing 3 men from Pittsfield.
There is some closure, perhaps, perhaps not. This does not bring back their loved one.
One of the victims, Robert Chadwell, had several family members in court. They were relieved when they heard the verdict.
There are going to be things that were said in this courtroom that I'm not going to be able to get out of my head. You understand? That image is stuck in my head for the rest of my life.
In the summer of 2011, David Glasser, Edward Frampton, and Robert Chadwell were found in Beckett with their bodies chopped up 2 weeks after they disappeared. Prosecutors believe Caius Veovis and David Shalou helped Hall kill the victims.
Obviously, this is just one of 3 cases that we need to try.
Prosecutors say Hall wanted Glasser dead to stop him from testifying against him in an assault case. Frampton and Chadwell were killed to eliminate any possible witnesses. Chadwell Smith told 22 News she believes Hall was the man who killed her brother.
I'm just overwhelmed by the verdict of being guilty. It's over. The healing process can begin.
In Massachusetts, the mandatory sentence for first-degree murder is life without parole. Sentencing for Hall is on Monday. Live in the studio, Ryan Walsh, 22 News.
In the quiet Berkshire Mountains of western Massachusetts, far from the sun-baked highways of California where the Hells Angels were born, Adam Lee Hall carved out a sinister reputation that would eventually earn him 3 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. His story isn't just about motorcycle gang violence, it's a chilling chronicle of how small-town America can harbor predators just as dangerous as those in any urban jungle. Hall didn't fit the stereotypical biker mold. Standing 5 feet 8 inches with an unremarkable build, he lacked the imposing physical presence of many outlaw bikers. What he possessed instead was a cold, calculating intelligence and a complete absence of empathy that made him uniquely dangerous. Former associates described his eyes as dead pools and noted his ability to switch from charming conversation to murderous rage without warning. Growing up in the working-class town of Peru, Massachusetts, Hall displayed troubling behavior from an early age. School records indicate multiple suspensions for fighting, animal cruelty, and bringing weapons to school. By his teens, he had accumulated a juvenile record, including assault, theft, and arson. These early crimes foreshadowed the violence that would define his adult life. Hall found his tribe when he joined the Hells Angels Berkshire County chapter in the early 2000s. Though smaller than chapters in major cities, the Berkshire Angels had established themselves as significant players in New England's drug trade, specializing in cocaine and prescription opioids. Hall quickly demonstrated his value through a combination of business savvy and ruthless enforcement, rising to become Sergeant-at-Arms, the club's primary enforcer responsible for discipline and security. Instead of reporting the theft to police, something forbidden by outlaw biker code, Hall took matters into his own hands in spectacular fashion. On July 25, 2009, Hall and 2 associates confronted Glasser at his Pittsfield apartment. What followed was a brutal attack. Hall beat Glasser with a baseball bat, breaking multiple bones and causing head injuries that would require hospitalization. During the assault, Hall allegedly placed a gun against Glasser's temple and forced him to sign over his truck to settle the debt for the supposedly stolen motorcycle parts. Here, Glasser made a decision that unwittingly signed his death warrant. He reported the assault to the police. In the world of outlaw bikers, cooperating with law enforcement is the ultimate sin, punishable by death. Hall was arrested on charges of assault and battery with a dangerous weapon, kidnapping, intimidation of a witness, and extortion. Released on bail while awaiting trial, Hall became obsessed with silencing Glasser. Court documents reveal how he first attempted to frame the mechanic by planting false evidence suggesting Glasser was involved in a series of break-ins across Berkshire County. When this failed to result in Glasser's arrest, Hall's plans took a darker turn. "We documented at least 3 separate plots to kill Glasser before the final one succeeded," explained Berkshire District Attorney David Capeless during Hall's murder trial. "This wasn't a crime of passion. This was calculated, premeditated, and executed with chilling precision." The situation escalated in August 2011, just weeks before Hall was scheduled to stand trial for the baseball bat assault. Hall, along with accomplices David Chaler and Caius Viovis, kidnapped Glasser from his apartment. But they didn't stop there. Edward Frampton, Glasser's roommate, and Robert Chadwell, a friend who happened to be visiting, were also abducted. The community was gripped by fear as the 3 men were reported missing. Law enforcement immediately suspected Hall's involvement given the pending case against him, but with no bodies and no crime scene, they struggled to build a case. After an 11-day search, the grisly discovery came. The dismembered remains of all 3 victims were found in plastic bags, buried in a shallow grave on private property near the Beckett-Washington town line. Autopsy reports revealed the brutality of their deaths. Glasser had been shot multiple times, while Frampton and Chadwell had been stabbed repeatedly. All 3 bodies showed signs of torture before death. The murders shocked the Berkshires, a region better known for its picturesque landscapes, cultural attractions like Tanglewood, and the Norman Rockwell Museum than for gang violence. The crime's brutality seemed imported from a different world, highlighting how the Hells Angels' reach extended far beyond their traditional urban strongholds. In 2014, after a 6-week trial, Hall was convicted of 3 counts of murder, 3 counts of kidnapping, and 4 counts of witness intimidation. Judge Kinder sentenced him to 3 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole, the harshest penalty available in Massachusetts, which has no death penalty. Behind bars at the maximum security Sousa Baranowski Correctional Center, Hall remains a feared figure. Prison reports indicate he has maintained his Hells Angels connections, with younger members showing him deference and carrying out his orders both inside and outside prison walls. Guards note that despite his unimposing size, other inmates, even those affiliated with rival gangs, give him a wide berth in common areas. Some guys talk tough, some look tough, but Hall is actually tough, a corrections officer confided. He doesn't need to raise his voice or flex. Everyone knows what he's capable of, and that's enough. The legacy of Adam Lee Hall's crimes continues to haunt Berkshire County. Local law enforcement maintains enhanced vigilance against outlaw motorcycle gang activity, and the tragedy prompted community discussions about the presence of organized crime in rural areas, often assumed to be immune from such threats. While Adam Lee Hall's brutality shocked a quiet New England community, Christopher Ray Ranieri demonstrated that the Hells Angels' internal justice system could be even more merciless than their treatment of outsiders. Christopher Ray Ranieri. Christopher Ray Ranieri, who was presumably involved in significant criminal operations. Christopher Ray Ranieri didn't just join the Hells Angels, he embodied their most dangerous qualities. As president of the Salem, Massachusetts chapter, Ranieri combined street intelligence with a coldly strategic mind and a complete absence of moral boundaries. Standing 6 feet 2 inches with massive forearms, covered in prison ink, and a shaved head that accentuated his intimidating presence, Ray wasn't just physically imposing, he had the calculating mind of a chess player who always thought 5 moves ahead, particularly when those moves involved silencing threats to the club. Born in 1975 in Boston's tough Charlestown neighborhood, Ranieri's path to the Hells Angels began in juvenile detention. By 15, he had already accumulated charges for assault, car theft, and drug possession. Unlike many troubled teens who eventually straighten out, Ranieri embraced criminality as a career path, viewing society's rules as suggestions that didn't apply to someone of his ambition and intelligence. Ray wasn't your typical muscle-bound biker, explained a former Massachusetts state trooper who tracked Ranieri for years. He read books on military strategy, studied business management. He could have been successful at anything, but he chose to apply that intelligence to running criminal enterprises. That made him exceptionally dangerous. Ranieri's ascent through the Hells Angels ranks was meteoric. After serving as a prospect for the minimum 1-year period, he received his full patch in 1998. Within 5 years, he had risen to Sergeant-at-Arms, responsible for discipline within the Salem chapter. By 2009, he had secured the chapter presidency, an unusually rapid rise that spoke to both his leadership abilities and his capacity for the violence necessary to maintain respect in the outlaw biker world. Under Ranieri's leadership, the Salem Hells Angels expanded their criminal portfolio beyond traditional biker activities. While maintaining their grip on the local methamphetamine trade, they diversified into prescription pill trafficking, identity theft, and even cryptocurrency scams. Ray understood that diversification was the key to long-term profitability, and he pushed his chapter to develop criminal expertise in areas law enforcement wasn't prepared to address. These qualities, intelligence, strategic thinking, and willingness to personally inflict violence, made Ranieri particularly valuable to the national leadership. When problems arose that required careful handling, Ray was often called in as a consultant or enforcer, establishing connections across multiple chapters that would later prove crucial in orchestrating his most notorious crime. The incident that would eventually land Ranieri in federal prison began at a motorcycle event in Ionia, New Hampshire, in July 2014. Joel Doughboy Silver, a member of the Sonoma County, California chapter, got into a heated argument with a Salem chapter member close to Ranieri. Witnesses described Silver as heavily intoxicated, loudly disrespecting both the Salem member and, by extension, Ranieri's leadership. In the Hells Angels' strict hierarchy, such public disrespect couldn't go unanswered. Ranieri consulted with Jonathan John Nelson, president of the Fresno chapter, and Russell Rusty Taylor, president of Sonoma County, Silver's direct superior. Together, they determined that Silver's transgression warranted the ultimate punishment, not just for the immediate offense, but as a warning to others who might consider similar disrespect. What followed demonstrated Ranieri's calculating nature. Rather than acting immediately, he helped orchestrate an elaborate trap. Silver was told that the leadership wanted to discuss the incident reasonably at the Fresno clubhouse. Believing he would face a fine or temporary suspension of privileges, Silver traveled to Fresno on July 15, 2014. Once inside the clubhouse, Silver quickly realized his fate was sealed. According to court testimony from witnesses who later cooperated with federal authorities, Silver was executed by another high-ranking member while Ranieri watched. The body was then transported to a local crematory that another Hells Angel had arranged to be left unlocked after hours. By morning, Silver's remains had been reduced to ashes, and his truck was torched in a remote location to destroy any evidence connecting him to Fresno. Most disturbing was what happened next. Ranieri flew from Massachusetts to Fresno to attend a party celebrating Silver's elimination. Witnesses described him as jubilant, raising toasts to problems solved and taking out the trash. This celebration of murder revealed the true depth of Ranieri's moral vacancy and reinforced his reputation as someone who didn't just accept violence as necessary, but actually reveled in it. For years, the truth about Silver's disappearance remained hidden behind the Hells Angels' code of silence. But as federal investigators built a comprehensive RICO case against the organization, cracks began to appear. Phone records placed Ranieri in communication with Nelson and Taylor immediately before and after Silver's disappearance. Surveillance footage captured his arrival at Fresno Airport. Most damaging, a prospect who had been ordered to clean the murder scene eventually turned informant, providing detailed testimony about what he had witnessed. Perhaps most disturbing is the continued influence Ranieri maintains over Hell's Angels operations on the outside. Despite strict monitoring of his communications, federal authorities suspect he continues to send orders through coded messages and third-party contacts. The Salem chapter, now led by one of his protégés, reportedly still consults him on major decisions, maintaining the fiction that he is on vacation, rather than acknowledging his incarceration. As Christopher Ray Ranieri serves his life sentence, his legacy of calculated violence and cold-blooded leadership continues to influence the Hell's Angels operations. But while Ranieri represented the stereotypical outlaw biker, our next subject shattered that image completely, demonstrating that the most dangerous Hell's Angels often hide behind respectable facades. Paul Eischeid. Paul Eischeid, dubbed the Wall Street Angel, suggesting a contrast between a professional financial career and involvement in outlaw biker activities.
After almost 2 decades on the run, a Hell's Angel gang member is back in U.S. custody for the gruesome murder of a local woman.
U.S. Marshals extradited Paul Eischeid back to the U.S. this week. He was captured in Argentina 7 years ago and held in jail down there. Investigators say back in 2001, Eischeid and another man murdered Cynthia Garcia, a mother of 6, by stabbing her 27 times, partially decapitating her.
Paul Eischeid defied every stereotype about Hell's Angels members. There were no prison tattoos stretching across his chest, no long beard or weathered leather vest worn day and night. Instead, Eischeid presented the polished image of a successful stockbroker, clean-cut, articulate, and dressed in tailored suits as he advised clients on investment strategies at Charles Schwab's Phoenix office. This carefully constructed double life made him not just an unusual Hell's Angel, but one of the most dangerous, a man who could move seamlessly between the corporate world and the violent underworld without raising suspicions. Born in 1969 to an upper-middle-class family in the Midwest, Eischeid's early life offered no hints of his future criminality. He excelled academically, earned a business degree from a respected university, and launched a promising financial career. Former colleagues described him as analytical, detail-oriented, and unfailingly professional, qualities that would later make him exceptionally valuable to the Hell's Angels' increasingly sophisticated criminal enterprises. Eischeid wasn't just living a double life, he was excelling at both of them, noted a former ATF agent who tracked him for years. Monday through Friday, he was making 6 figures giving investment advice. Weekends, he was engaged in some of the most brutal violence we've ever documented in outlaw biker cases. This duality made Eischeid particularly valuable to the Mesa chapter. His financial knowledge helped the club launder money through seemingly legitimate investments, while his clean record and professional demeanor kept him off law enforcement's radar. He maintained separate phones, vehicles, and even wardrobes, ensuring his two worlds never visibly intersected. Colleagues at Charles Schwab had no idea their mild-mannered co-worker spent his weekends wearing Hell's Angels colors and participating in the club's often violent activities. The facade shattered on October 27, 2001, during what began as a typical Saturday night party at the Mesa Hell's Angels clubhouse. Cynthia Garcia, a 44-year-old mother of 6, made a fatal decision to attend the gathering. According to court documents, Garcia became intoxicated as the night progressed and began disrespecting the club, a dangerous mistake in any outlaw biker environment, but especially within the hyper-masculine culture of the Hell's Angels. What followed revealed the true Paul Eischeid hiding beneath the Brooks brothers' suits. Witnesses later testified that Eischeid was among the members who attacked Garcia inside the clubhouse, beating her unconscious in a brutal assault. But the violence didn't end there. Garcia, still alive but severely injured, was thrown into the trunk of a car and driven to the desert outside Phoenix. In the remote landscape, miles from civilization, Eischeid allegedly participated in one of the most gruesome murders in Hell's Angels history. Garcia was stabbed multiple times and mutilated before being left to die in the desert. Her body, discovered days later by hikers, was so badly disfigured that identification required dental records. Medical examiners would later testify they had rarely seen such extreme violence, even in gang-related homicides. For nearly 2 years after the murder, Eischeid continued his double life. managing client portfolios by day while participating in the Mesa chapter's criminal activities by night. This period ended in July 2003, when federal agents launched Operation Black Biscuit, an ambitious undercover investigation targeting the Arizona Hells Angels. The operation, which placed multiple ATF agents undercover within or adjacent to the club, revealed a sophisticated criminal organization involved in drug trafficking, extortion, money laundering, and violence. Among the numerous indictments was Paul Eischeid, charged with kidnapping, racketeering, and murder in connection with Cynthia Garcia's death. Here, Eischeid's clean-cut image and lack of criminal record proved advantageous one final time. Despite the gravity of the charges against him, a federal magistrate granted him bail, requiring only that he wear an electronic monitoring ankle bracelet while awaiting trial. This decision, later described by the U.S. Marshals Service as a significant misjudgment, gave Eischeid the opportunity to execute a carefully planned escape. On July 29, 2004, Eischeid made his move. He cut off his ankle monitor, collected emergency cash and fake identification he had prepared, and disappeared. Law enforcement later discovered he received significant help from fellow Hells Angels member Robert Eugene Tate, who provided a fraudulent passport and initial transportation. Within 72 hours of removing his ankle monitor, Eischeid had crossed the border into Mexico, beginning an international manhunt that would last nearly 7 years. The breakthrough came in 2011 through a combination of international cooperation and old-fashioned detective work. Argentinian police, working with U.S. Marshals, tracked Eischeid to Buenos Aires, where he had established a new life under an alias. When arrested, he possessed a sophisticated package of fraudulent documents, including an Argentine national ID card, driver's license, and credit cards in his new identity. On June 3, 2019, rather than risk trial with its potential for a death sentence, Eischeid accepted a plea agreement, admitting his role in the murder in exchange for a 30-year prison sentence. At his sentencing hearing, Garcia's children described the devastating impact of losing their mother in such a brutal manner, and the additional pain caused by Eischeid's years as a fugitive. Today, Eischeid resides in the high-security section of the United States Penitentiary, Tucson, where his Wall Street knowledge provides little advantage. Fellow inmates, including other Hells Angels members, view him with a mixture of respect for his years evading capture and contempt for eventually accepting a plea deal rather than maintaining the club's code of silence to the end. His case represents a stark warning about the evolving nature of outlaw motorcycle gangs. No longer limited to stereotypical rough-edged bikers, today's clubs recruit members with specialized skills. Financial experts, technology specialists, even lawyers who can help transform traditional criminal activities into sophisticated enterprises. Paul Eischeid, the stockbroker who became one of America's most wanted fugitives, stands as the prototype of this new breed of outlaw biker, proving that sometimes the most dangerous Hells Angels are the ones you'd never recognize.